It's working.
Live!
There we go. All right. 3, 2, 1. Hi, I'm Mitch,
And I'm Todd,
and we are the Grizzled Geeks.
back at last.
This week we talk about
Dinosaurs encased in amber.
malware hidden in GIFs,
Netflix Offline Playback is here, finally.
Spider-Man: Homecoming,
Tom Hanks is a creepy Steve Jobs.
Tom Cruise runs from the mummy,
Buckaroo Banzai is dead. Call Johnny Yaya and Johnny Big Booty and let him know.
Kingkiller Chronicles is getting made as a series,
Last of Us Part 2 is coming, or is out.
surprise Mechwarrior 5.
And we'll finish up with a nice discussion of Westworld season finale. Lots of spoilers in there.
All right, so let's get into it then.
All right.
So,
Feathered dinosaur tail found encased in amber. What kind of kinky shit has Amber been up to? Does her father know about this? So I looked at the picture.
you just went right there,
I went
right off the bat.
there. I thought I'd start us off with a bang.
I figured we would just sort of ease into gear, and you just launched right in.
I just launched
you
right
just
in.
took off right off the line.
That's right. We missed our podcast last week out partying like it's 1999. And so I thought I'd start us off with a bang this week. I looked at this and, I'm big fan of Jurassic Park. I love this stuff. It's really cool. I'm just curious about the one statement somebody made about this feather where they said it seems to be ornamental rather than functional. How the hell can you tell that looking at this thing encased in amber? I'm looking at the picture.
Oh, hold on. I'm just going to put on my neck beard a little bit, just for a second. I'll take it back off afterwards. But if you look at the types of feathers, you have the long, hard shaft. Yeah, I said it.
Poor Amber.
Of the feather. And then smaller branching feathers up to the point where there are little hook and groove feathers that snap together to make a solid flight surface in modern feathers for birds. And these were more bushy feathers that weren't necessarily for flight, that would have been more functional for warmth or display.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's what they meant by for display.
I don't think all feathers only have their value in helping you to fly. The cooling aspects of feathers is the other thing that is functional. So I took it ornamental as being it was a freaking peacock, and I think that was my only beef about it. I'm sure it had some sort of usefulness, or it wouldn't have evolved into using that. That's right. I used evolved. I think I just offended all my Christian friends out there.
Whatever.
So I think we spent too much time on poor Amber, but I thought that was rather interesting. Hopefully Jurassic Park coming soon. They'll be able to crank up some feathered dinosaurs.
So, are they going to go back and is Steven Spielberg going to ruin all of my childhood memories by putting feathers on all the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park now?
Absolutely.
Is that going to be a thing that we have to be outraged about?
It is outrageous. He's going to digitally put feathers on the brontosaurus, and it's going to fly around. Brachiosaurus. God, yes, there is no such thing as a brontosaurus. The Brachiosaurus is going to fly around with its dinosaur feathers and prove that they are functional.
Yeah, so I'm not looking forward to that day. All right.
There. Okay.
So, skipping over that, little one I want to slip in there. Google opened up its assistant actions to developers. So, being a software developer, I found this one really interesting. I'll try not to. Again, I guess I got the neck beard still on from the last one. So this is something that's necessary in order for Google Home to compete with Amazon's Alexa. So Amazon Alexa has been out in the market for a while, and one of the things that's made it so popular is it opened up its APIs to developers to be able to add integrations on their own, and they call it skills inside of Amazon development. And so people can submit these skills for
skills.
the Amazon Alexa Yeah, all kinds of mad skills. Uh, to allow it to integrate with other services or functions, turn on lights or turning on the Internet of Things type devices, interact with those kinds of things. And so opening up the API for Google Assistant allows Google to do that, where Google, when it launched, was purely a closed ecosystem, and so whatever they developed interactions with were the only things that Google Assistant could interact with. So it's a good thing. I think it's good for competition with Amazon for Alexa, and competition is good in the marketplace anyway. It keeps people on their toes. It means that we as the consumers tend to benefit. So that's all I want to say about that.
That's good news.
All right.
So now on to more good news.
Yeah, malware infects computers by hiding in browser ad GIFs.
I thought the ads were the malware, and now you're telling me they're even worse than, in addition to being the mind-numbing ads, they're also evil?
So this is hiding a payload or malicious code inside of the alpha layer of a GIF, the transparency layer of a GIF, and the bytecode, and then having a modified JavaScript library served up by one of the reserving sites in order to be able to read those bits out of the GIFs and then execute bad code on your PC. Crazy effective at being able to deliver this stuff to your system. And this is the reason that I don't allow ads to run in any of my browsers. It's the reason why I run an ad blocker. It's the reason why, if I could get away with it as well, I would block ads on mobile devices, any of that kind of stuff. I don't want to be served up unwittingly by major sites this kind of content.
Yeah, I think Grizzled Geeks definitely, we are anti-advertisement. I think we've stood for that before, and I'd like to say this message is brought to you by Geritol. 1 tablet a day can help you. Malware, man. You know how I feel about hackers. I think I've said it before. Anybody who's listening to this, if you walk into your friend's house and you're like, "Hey, Bob, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Hey, I'm just writing some malware." You have my permission to pick up the nearest vase and smash it into his head. If you're not a violent person, use a Boston cream pie. But what the hell's wrong with people? It just,
well,
it's why we can't have nice things.
The reason they do it is because there's money involved. There is good money to be had by injecting these kinds of things onto the computers of unsuspecting people that don't pay attention. And it's kind of like spam 10 years ago. If 2 or 3% of the spam gets through and hooks people, it's worth it.
Well, I think when we find hackers, we should cut their little fingers off. That's what I think. And that's constitutional. It's in the Constitution. You cannot put somebody in jeopardy of life or limb. So they're implying that you can put somebody in jeopardy of limb if you follow due process. So this is constitutional. We find the hackers, we cut their fingers off, and watch them try to pound away at the keyboards with missing nubs.
What?
Yeah, I've been wondering, because our computer, our browsers up there have been whacked for a long time, and I'm like, I thought I was pretty locked down. I don't have ad blockers, but I'm going to go out and get an ad blocker, and I think you're right. I think the message really to take from this, the useful message, is everyone should be running an ad blocker. If you're not getting one, go out and get one now. This is just terrible.
And I really want to support certain sites that I go to on a regular basis, but I'm more inclined to give them $1 a month on Patreon than I am to unblock ads on their site. I'd rather do it that way.
Yeah, if you're going to put ads on there, check your shit. If you're going to try to make money from something, but I realize most of them use services, so the ads are auto-generated and just put in as a plug-in on their site, and they have no control over the content a lot of times. And
Well, and trying to take any kind of control over that is really hard. So I follow a webcomic um, online, and the guy sends out regular messages, and he wants people to unblock, ad blockers for his site, and he jumps through hoops in order to serve up content that is acceptable to the community, isn't offensive, and isn't taking over the browser or doing too much. He goes out of his way, and he still gets shit for it and gets people blocking ads, and that's the way he makes his living. And I feel really bad about that. And if I care about those things, instead of unblocking the ads on his site, I just send him, a dollar or two a month on Patreon or PayPal, or put a tip in the donate bucket or whatever. And I'd rather do it that way.
And this message brought to you by Tampax. So, all right, I agree. I have nothing more to say on the malware. It irritates the crap out of me. Viruses in general, and having to put so many things on your computer, it slows your computer down because there are assholes out there writing malware. So,
Speaking of viruses and bacteria,
yes, it's a good segue into the doctor sifting bacteria from your blood using magnets, refrigerator magnets, right? They're just pulling them right off the fridge, and
not quite. The whole process for this is they introduce antibodies to your system that are charged with iron, and because they're charged with iron, they latch on to the bacteria, and then they use dialysis to filter the blood, and they use magnets to pull the bacteria with the antibodies attached to the bacteria out of the blood as it passes through the dialysis machine.
So it's a lot like Iron Man grabbing Captain America's shield and then pulling it out through the kidney. Which sounds painful.
Yeah, I thought that too.
Pretty, that's pretty amazing.
If I've got to get dialysis in order to do this, something's gone terribly, terribly wrong. But this is meant to combat sepsis.
Something's going to kill you, and
something that's a 50-50 chance if you get it, or even less than that. Chance of survival without just heavy rounds of antibiotics, which is what we do now.
Right.
And antibiotics, are less and less effective as we go on. We're trying harder and harder on a yearly basis to find effective antibiotics to treat bacteria strains. So
this is pretty amazing. You see these advances in medicine using technology, like the things they're doing with lasers now, and also the story I read that I was telling you about earlier about using electrical currents to stimulate your body to clot faster so that you could stop gushing wounds by using electricity. And
which is some stuff that you see right in Star Trek,
Westworld.
Yes.
I like the Star Trek
the Star
analogy
Trek future,
because we get so many new things, and now you're seeing the medical things, and obviously there are limits to what you can do with technology. If there weren't, there are a lot of red-shirted crew members that would still be alive today from Star Trek. So you can't fix everything, but it is kind of amazing to see Star Trek-like technology coming out and saving lives. So
kids, ask your parents about red shirts.
That's right. And now on to BMW remotely locking a thief inside of a car. I love this,
I saw this article and I laughed so hard. So, this isn't something that would happen all the time, but there's this thief who steals this car and then falls asleep inside of the car with the engine running. The guy realizes it's stolen, contacts BMW or the car company, and they find the car and they remotely lock it and then send the police to his location using GPS from the car, and he can't get out of the car. He's trapped in there.
What would have been a really happy ending is if he'd been in the garage at his house with it running and they locked him in there, and then when they got there, no, That'd be a sad thing.
That's,
I took it too far again. Damn it. That is cool.
This
though.
is outrageous.
Outrageous. That's kind of cool. I've always said, or I've said for a long time, that we're getting to the point now with technology in cars where they should be able to shut your car down remotely when somebody steals it. Just shut it. Like when you see all these car chases where the cops are lined up and they're chasing some guy, call maybe OJ down the road. The cops should be able to just go in, boom, kill the car. You're going nowhere.
yeah, why bother?
It
Of
would save
course.
lives.
If none of the cars drove themselves, it would also save lives.
We're not going to have the automatic car debate again, are we?
We can skip it this week. Maybe save it for after Christmas.
All right. We'll have a heated debate about autonomous cars. So now on to something that truly makes me happy. Netflix Offline Playback is finally here. So if you're next to me on Interstate 66 in the morning while I'm commuting and you see me holding up a tablet, you'll know that I've downloaded something wonderful and I'm watching TV instead of driving my car.
Obviously, in your brand new Tesla with the autopilot update that was applied in December, right? So it just pretty much drives itself?
No, in my Mustang with the foot on the floor, not giving a care in the world. So a lot of people are excited about this. I think you touched on it earlier. It's the second best thing Netflix could do. The first would be more content. You know, they need to get working on a Stranger Things sequel right away because these kids aren't getting any younger. They're growing up quick. They're going to hit puberty and then they're going to look funny when they're all 6 feet tall. So
Yeah, they will.
they need to crank out more content. But second to that is the ability to offload or download a show you want to watch. How does it work?
I mean, you push the button. It's available now. If you go into your phone or you go into your tablet, you can mark one of these things to download, and then you get on a plane or you get into a subway or whatever, and you lose signal, and your Netflix show just keeps on playing.
I will say that it effed me up the other night for the first time. I didn't know. I'd heard it was coming out. I turn on my tablet. I go to watch something, and I push the wrong damn button. It proceeds to download the thing, and I'm like, no, I don't want to download. God damn it! I had to exit back out and come back into Netflix because the whole thing just locked up. But it could be my cheap Asus tablet that I love my Asus tablet, but I accidentally started to download something. And that's when I first saw that it was there. So apparently it's pretty easy to do.
Well, this is good news for people that have an SD card in their Android tablet or phone or whatever, because now you've got a use for that thing again. You can download movies to that.
Where's Tim? We can reignite that debate we had in episode 1 about the usefulness of those cards.
Yeah. All right. So last thing we've got in the from the news is an anti-drone gun able to take down targets from 1.2 miles away.
We got a bogey coming in with spy camera attached to take that sucker down.
So the awesome thing about this one is that most the technology to be able to take down a drone to interrupt the signal, it already exists out there. But the bad thing is that it's really short range. It's pretty much right on top of you, and if it's carrying something bad, a bomb or whatever, it's not
dirty
great
diaper.
to have it. Yeah, it's not great to have that dirty diaper fall right in your face whenever you take that drone out. You want that dirty diaper to fall on somebody else's face. Somebody else a mile, maybe a mile and a quarter away. And this is the gun that you can use to make that happen.
And if you're standing on a shoreline, that dirty diaper safely falls into the ocean. Hopefully not onto a fishing boat.
Into the ocean, and it eventually joins the pile of garbage that floats throughout the ocean to become its own sentient being in the ocean, wondering why it was abandoned there.
Part of the garbage flotilla. That just reminded me, I don't mean to segue into something else, but I went to this cosmetic store today with my wife, and I'm getting bored because she's looking at cosmetics, and I turn around and there's a cologne thing there, and they've got like Polo and Ralph Lauren, and I'm like, I'll go and see if there's any cologne that might make me smell better. The second I picked up one of those bottles of cologne, this woman was on me. She's like running across the room practically. Can I help you, sir? Can I help you? I'm like, no. I walked away and told my wife, said that woman chased me off from the cologne thing. And then I thought about it. I'm like, I'm a grown-ass man. I make good money. I can go pick up anything I want to at that cologne thing. Well, she was not to be outdone. I went back to the cologne thing, started picking stuff up again. She came back this time armed with a cologne and said, try this, and just let me have it. And it still stinks to high heaven. It stunk the car up. I walked back with my tail between my legs, and I told my wife, she wins.
So, when you started telling this story, in my mind, I was envisioning the story from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where the dad goes up to the counter at the store and getting the woman to model lingerie for him.
Yeah, it basically.
Until his son comes up and busts him.
This lady hit me with repellent and drove me away from the expensive cologne counter. So
It's not nearly as nice. I mean,
I can still smell it, and it's better than a dirty diaper, but only by a margin. All right, so anti-drone gun. I'm gonna go out and get one. Can I get over under? Can I get like a shotgun situation where there's a real shotgun underneath and the anti-drone thing on top? No.
I mean, you could. I'm looking at the picture of this gun, and the guy they've got holding the gun looks like he's pretty stacked. He definitely spent some time at the gym. Of course, the gun looks like you need to be able to pick that damn thing up. So if you want to strap another gun to that gun, more power to you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that thing looks pretty heavy.
Yeah, we didn't have it in the list, but I think it was New York that is trying to get the was it Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, applied to tasers.
Applied to tasers?
Yeah, the right to bear tasers in self-defense.
I'm a little worried looking at this picture of this thing. If you point this at somebody's nads, they're probably never having kids. That thing is huge. I hope your child rearing days are behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, tasers. You have the right to bear tasers. All right. Wow, that's it for news. We made it through the news in 30 minutes.
Only twice the amount of time we thought we would take.
Yes, which takes us into Spider-Man. Spider-Man. I find this funny because we had this pre-conversation before we started up, and this trailer has reversed our positions. You know, I hated cherry red costume Spider-Man from the Avengers. Was not a fan.
And I initially had problems with him, but I came around thinking about the comics, thinking about, what is the core Peter Parker? He's a nerd. He's nervous. He's a kid. He's kind of in over his head, but he's just going with it, and he's just running his mouth constantly to sort of cover that nervousness, and that's just how Spider-Man works.
See, that's your Spider-Man from your generation. My Spider-Man from when I was a kid was a lot like Charlie Brown. He was kind of a sad, pathetic person in his personal life where, it was Spider-Man was wisecracking, but Peter Parker wasn't having a lot of fun in the comics I read from the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay, well, Spider-Man is the one I'm talking about, just wisecracking, constantly.
And I was on the fence about Tom Holland, but after watching the Avengers, when I saw him in the previews for the Avengers, it wasn't the Avengers, it was Captain America Civil War. I was like, I really hate that costume. But then when I watched Civil War, I liked him a lot better. His wisecracking was a little more natural, I thought, than Andrew Garfield's. Andrew Garfield's wisecracking felt a little forced.
So I liked Andrew Garfield as a Spider-Man. I liked him better than Tobey Maguire. The thing I didn't like about the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man was the my parents were secret spies storyline.
Yeah.
I thought all of that was just crap.
I thought the first two Spider-Mans made by Sam Raimi were the best written Spider-Mans. It's a shame that we couldn't have had Tobey Maguire wasn't that bad. I just liked the first two a lot.
So, I mean, he wasn't bad. He was the best Spider-Man that we had up until that point. So, I mean, I didn't hate it at the time. I saw, Andrew Garfield afterwards, and I liked him as a Spider-Man better than Tobey Maguire. I just didn't like the storyline as much. And this kid, I think he's all right. I think he's unknown. I think that he could work the role. He's not a known, um, face or whatever, but that could definitely work. So if he owns the role, he could be doing Spider-Man for a while.
Yeah, and so the trailer comes out. I watched the trailer, and I came around on it, and I wasn't really looking forward to the Sony Marvel team up movie, but it had Tony Stark in it, being Tony Stark, and I just love what Robert Downey Jr. has done with that character, and so for me, the best parts of that trailer were the ones that he was in it, and we talked about um, he's going. Spidey goes to Washington, and we live near Washington. I grew up practically in Washington. Not a lot of tall buildings to swing from in Washington. There's a height limit, and in the preview, he does find the tallest thing in Washington, the pencil, goes to the top of it, and then jumps off. I hate to tell any of you who've never been to Washington, there's nothing for him to put his webbing onto to stop his fall. That dude is going to land in the mall, and it's going to hurt.
Well, maybe he thinks that the reflection pool is deep enough that he can dive into it and then come out.
Another mistake. That's a shallow pool. So
Kids,
you said,
ask your parents.
yeah, it's like the gene pool in Washington. It's also very shallow. Boom, boom. Thank you.
Heyo.
Ew. All right. So moving on to the first of our Toms.
Yeah.
The Circle trailer with Tom Hanks is watching you doing his creepy Stephen Jobs impression. So he's watching Hermione.
Yeah, so Hermione decides she's a full-fledged wizard, and now she's going to go work in Silicon Valley for Tom Hanks, who is a creepy Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, whatever type character. And he's all about knowing everything about you. Knowing a little bit about you is good. Knowing everything is better.
Yeah, this is very much a 1984 vibe. I think it's a clever choice on the producers to choose Tom Hanks for this role, because in order for somebody to get people to sign up for something like this, they'd have to be likable. And who's more likable and lovable in Hollywood than Tom Hanks? So, if they'd pick somebody who plays a villain all the time that you don't like, Anthony Hopkins, love to watch Anthony Hopkins. We'll talk about him later in Westworld, but Anthony Hopkins not talking anybody into putting something in that watches him all the time. Nobody wants to end up next to the fava beans and the fine Chianti.
I'm holding back from my comparison.
Yes, let's not go down that dark segue.
All right, so yeah, I think Tom Hanks is a good choice to be able to sell that to the public. Everyone loves, Tom Hanks and all of his different characters. Um, yeah, it's definitely a 1984 Big Brother is watching you type of situation, and you kind of, it's a neat thought experiment. Yes, having people being able to see everything all the time would clear up the right and wrong of things, but giving anybody the power to be able to do that and to eliminate privacy whatsoever allows for another level of corruption that we don't have. There's no opportunity for right now.
You mentioned before, and I think it's very true, this really smacks of Black Mirror. It's a popular theme in Black Mirror, technology being used for evil with good intention that turns evil. It could be an episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah, and Black Mirror is not even used for evil. It's just here's technology that could be, and here's the cautionary tale of what happens if we don't think things through all the way.
Ask Dr. Frankenstein. Fire, bad. Yeah. So that's the first Tom.
Yeah. Second Tom Cruise.
Tom.
Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise crazy.
So bad news for you, Brendan Fraser. You're out of the Mummy franchise. Tom Cruise, you're in Mission Improbable.
Also, Billy Zane, we're not going to need you this time.
That's right. So this Mummy looks kind of interesting. It looks like a new take on the Mummy. You mentioned before that it kind of reminds you of Dracula. What was it, the Untold Story or something like that?
Well,
Or
so this is Universal Studios' attempt to dig into its vault of franchises that they own the rights to, their monster franchise, and try and re-energize it today. So the first one that they did was Dracula. This is something they said that they're trying to do, and they tried to do that with Dracula Untold.
it
Not
bombed.
not a terrible movie, but yeah, it was a stinker. It was a bomb.
It was a
It was
stinker.
not a good movie.
But I watched it and it held my attention for most of the movie. At the end, it was one of those movies where you go, well, it wasn't that bad. It killed a couple hours while I was stuck here at the house.
Right, but did you watch the movie in the theater when the hype was out, or did you hear about how bad the movie was, find it on HBO for free, and see what it was about, and see if it was really that bad, and then say, I didn't hate it?
I hate to say this, but I have seen so many iterations of Dracula in my lifetime. I was not going to pay 1 red cent to go see another iteration of Dracula, no matter who was playing. Maybe if Christopher Lee had done one right before he died, I might would have gone to see that because I do love me some Christopher Lee as Dracula. He's my favorite. But I wasn't spending any money. But if it's on HBO, I'm paying for HBO and it's there for free. I'll give it a watch, and then I'll give it an enthusiastic thumb sideways.
So that's what I'm saying. Um, we've talked about this in the past. Uh, if somebody hypes something up, say you're a huge fan of The Walking Dead, and you tell your friend at work
My friend
that
Tim,
you're, let's call him Tim.
let's call him
Just
Tim.
this theoretical person, Tim. You tell Tim that there's this show called Walking Dead, and it's the most amazing show that you've ever seen before, and that he should watch The Walking Dead, and how great The Walking Dead is, and how great the acting is, and all the stuff that you're seeing, and it's geekdom has come again in the form of The Walking Dead. You must watch Walking Dead, and he sees it and he goes, "It was good, but it wasn't as good as Todd said it was."
I don't
I
even
hate
think
it.
he. I don't even think this fictional Tim person said it was good. I think this fictional Tim person crapped on it because this fictional Tim person has no taste in entertainment. That's right, Tim. I'm talking to you. You, Tim. You go back and you watch it and you love it.
Shots fired. Shots fired right here. Mark the date on the calendars. Tim may or may not be back to defend his position. Tim.
This alleged Tim, who may allegedly have been on one of our earlier podcasts. All right, so the Mummy official trailer. So now we have what, superhero Mummy, where he's not such a bad mummy. This isn't your parents' mummy. This is good, superpowered, fighting for justice mummy.
No, no, it's a female mummy, and she.
I want my
Uh,
mummy.
uh, so yeah,
Oh, you're my mummy.
I thought I recognized the actress, and I haven't had a chance to look up who she is, but she looked like one of the actresses from Orange Is the New Black. And if I'm wrong, and I probably am, sorry. But so yeah, she looks interesting. A different take on the whole mummy situation.
Shit.
It's not some pharaoh or whatever. If only there was some internet of database that
You
could
mean
tell us.
Sophia Butella? Off the top of my head, that's the name I'm coming up with.
So what else has she done?
I don't know because IMDb is not cooperating. All right, there we go. What else has? Oh, wait a minute. I may have the wrong. Oh yeah, no. Sophia Butella. Sophia Butella. Oh, fetching, quite
Yeah,
fetching and exotic
this
looking.
this one
Star Trek
had
Beyond.
Russell Crowe as well.
She played
Oh, no, I haven't seen
Jayla.
that.
Oh, she was the weird alien chick that they find on the planet who kind of helps them out. Kingsman, the Secret Service. She was Gazette. She was the chick with the legs, with the pointy legs. That's who she is. From
Oh yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly who she is.
she was badass in that.
She was. Um, I have a
Just
terrible, terrible story to tell. How I didn't review the ratings for Kingsman, and I took my children with my wife to see Kingsman. And not only did I take them to see Kingsman in the movie, we went to an Alamo Draft House to see Kingsman, and the preview before the movie was Samuel L. Jackson telling parents that it's not his fault that their kids watch him curse on screen and that he didn't teach them to curse, that it's their responsibility to not take children to see his movies. And when my wife saw that, she looked at me and gave me the dirtiest look. And I knew at that point that I screwed up, but I wanted to see The Kingsman so bad. I was like, maybe it won't be that bad. For those of you that have seen The Kingsman, I had two hands out on both sides next to me for the end of the movie, covering the faces of my children.
But you couldn't plug their ears. You only got two hands.
I only had two hands, and I just wanted to curl up and die.
Mommy, what's anal sex? Oh, all right. Yes, that's a good good example. I don't know how we segued into that from the Mummy. We've been all over the place.
You're welcome, people. That was amazing. Maybe I shared too much. I don't care. I do it for the art.
You should have gone to Kids in Mind, definitely, before going to see that. That was a mommy and daddy movie.
So, speaking of IMDb, a free service out on the internet, IMDb has a parent's guide. I now pay attention to that. It doesn't make judgment and say, you're going to go to hell if you let your kids see this. It just tells you what kind of language they use and what kind of drugs, alcohol, sex, smoking stuff they have in there. They give you examples, and you make your own damn decision. Thank you, IMDb, for putting that out there. And the people that just voluntarily put information about there themselves.
Let me just read off the plot keywords to you from IMDb for...
We don't really need to drive this home anymore, do we?
Let's read off the plot keywords: female rear nudity, spy, training, anal sex, hero kills a woman.
I said, had I read the reviews, I would not have taken them to see the movie. I gave IMDb as an example of a good place to get said reviews.
Oh,
I think I've said enough.
During the movie's climax, a woman offers the protagonist anal sex if he saves the world. Well, you know, if you save the world, quite frankly, don't you deserve a little treat? Just... Oh, man.
So whatever I do next, just don't hate me.
It won't be saving the world, I can tell you that. All right,
what I do next is review every damn movie that we potentially watch. I tell you that. Guaranteed.
So, The Mummy, Tom Cruise, go see it. Hopefully, wait, I better go look at the parental guidance on that before I advise people to go see it.
You know what? People, make your own decisions. Check the ratings. Be responsible. Don't do like I did.
Oh boy!
So let's take that interesting conversation and segue over to a topic about a man who makes movies that I wouldn't let my kids see either, and that's Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith, I love seeing the stuff that he makes. However, I wouldn't let my kids see it. It's sometimes a little uncomfortable, you know. Like in the back of a Volkswagen.
Yeah, you know my love of Kevin Smith. I watched lots of his or listened to lots of his podcasts. I think he is one of the funniest guys on the planet. Just naturally funny, spontaneously funny. He is a riot. But I'm lukewarm to most of the products he creates. They're not equal to him, the man, in my opinion. Much like I'm that way a little bit about Dave Grohl. I like the Foo Fighters. I own a lot of their albums. I listen to their music and everything. But I I just like Dave Grohl more than the Foo Fighters. So he was going to do this Buckaroo Banzai TV series, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So he was, and I didn't even know that he was on board to do this. I've only seen Buckaroo Banzai a couple of times. I've never seen the whole thing from the beginning. I always, it's one of those weird Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon shows. You just are flipping through and you see this weird thing pop up on your screen. It's in the middle of the movie and you have no idea what's going on. But I suspect that if you started from the beginning, you wouldn't know what was going on anyway. And it's just this amazing thing that's playing out on your TV, and I can't turn away from it. It's amazing to watch, and seeing something so weird, so quirky, get made as a television series. I was all about it, and I was happy to hear that Kevin Smith was involved. I like seeing where he goes. I think he would have added a neat voice to the series. But then seeing what the studio was doing to try and get this made, I definitely agree with Kevin Smith with his stance on why he decided to back out of the project.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we can't get things made sometimes that we really want to see, like Firefly and other things. There's a huge audience for them built in, just sitting there waiting to receive the product, waiting to receive the goodness, but it just sometimes doesn't work out.
Yeah, and for those at home who haven't read the article, the reason that he backed out of the project wasn't because of creative differences or anything like that. The studio that wanted to produce it didn't have the rights to produce it, and they were going to sue the original director and writer of the film to get the rights to make the show. Kevin Smith was expecting to be able to work with these guys because he wanted to honor the film that they made and have them as part of the creative process in making the series. And as soon as he found out that the studio was going to have to sue them because they didn't want to have this made, he backed out of the film. So huge props to Kevin Smith for doing that.
I don't know if you ever heard his interview with Peter Weller and John Lithgow when they did a 25th anniversary or 30th anniversary of Buckaroo Banzai, and he had them on and they talked about the making of the movie and everything. It was just fantastic to listen to. It was a lot of fun to listen to. And so I know it is a project near and dear to his heart. And I think lawyers are why we can't have nice things.
They are. And speaking of a property that's near and dear to my heart and a lot of geeks that I know, Patrick Rothfuss has made a series of books called the Kingkiller Chronicles. Kingkiller Chronicles. First book, Name of the Wind. Amazing book. So, sort of high fantasy, Tolkien level stuff. It's his own universe. It's incredibly clever. Wonderful book. I love the characters. I love the tone. I love the pacing. I chew them up, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting for Patrick to finish the third book in the series, and so I can continue the story. It's happening slower than I would like, but I'm willing to wait. It's just so good.
Hey, what series does that remind me of, where the author just won't finish the last book? What?
Paul and Storm wrote a song for a guy who didn't want to finish a series.
Yes, I heard that. That was fantastic. So you were saying before that this is going to be a series or movie? It's going to be like a mini series, or?
So I think they're going to end up doing both. The article says that they're going to do a series. I'll just bring it up again to refresh my memory. So Lionsgate, they've got multiple deals. They are going to do film, television, and video games based on the series.
They're going to mine the shit out of this.
They are. I guess they're hoping for the next Harry Potter out of this or whatever. They're going to be a little sad when they only realize they've got 3 books so far. I mean, he's an amazing writer. That third book's been a long time coming, though, so I hope we see it soon, and it holds up to everyone's expectations.
I think an interesting
But
twist. You said that the protagonist is a bard, so there will be a lot of music in it.
so yeah, he's the easiest way to describe it is a bard. He's a bard. He's also an arcanist. So in this world, he goes to an arcanist college to learn sympathy, which is their name for, it's kind of a science magic type thing.
Like a podcast.
Kind of like that, but totally different.
Just like that, but not.
Just like that, but different in every single way. So yeah, he is, part of the core of his character that you see early on are, and I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it. If you haven't read it, you should go out and buy the books or go to your local library or whatever. They're amazing. I encourage you to read this series. He he has always been involved with music, and music is very special to him, and so music should be very much a part of whatever show or movie or anything that comes out of this. So they also have another big name right now in in Hollywood and in Broadway, Lin Manuel Miranda, who did Hamilton on Broadway, who most recently did the Disney movie Moana, or I don't even know how to pronounce it. I
Moana?
haven't seen it yet. Yeah,
Princess Moana.
the Hawaiian based show that they're doing or they've done with The Rock. Heard lots of good things about that, but he's been doing the music for all of those things, and I've heard nothing but good things from him or about him from this stuff. So having someone on project to be able to bring the music from the series to life really needs to be there in order for this to be successful, to live up to the character.
I will give it a watch and listen. I'll give it a try and see what I think. I love a good epic series, fantasy series. I haven't read one in a long time. Since my eye surgeries, I don't read anymore. But it just
You know what? I know you have a long commute. Books on tape.
I can't afford books on tape, but if you could sit next to me and just read to me, that would be fantastic.
You know who can afford books on tape? Your local library. You can even get the CD and rip that shit.
I used to do that a lot, actually. I used to listen to a lot of books on tape. I was listening to The Hobbit on tape, which was kind of embarrassing because it was a summer day, I had the windows down, I'm sitting in the light, and they got to the stupid part in The Hobbit where the dwarves are all singing their stupid mining song, and the person doing the books on tape is singing this crap, and I had it turned up loud so I could understand what's happening. Somebody pulls it next to me, looks over at me like, "What in God's name are you listening to?" And they're like, "We dig into mine," and I'm like, oh, God. So
Rack the dishes, break the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
yeah, exactly. Yes. So that taught me. So I used to listen to a lot of books on tapes. I just haven't done it in a while. I took a whole psychology course on books on tape and then went and passed the CLEP test so I wouldn't have to take the class to get my 4-year degree. So books on tape, I will give it a listen and a like. Games that want to get out. All right.
So a couple of games that we had on here, but before we do, I did want to talk a little bit about a game that I had played when it originally came out and never finished, but I've gone back and I've been playing again. Darksiders. I recently picked it up on Steam, the War Mastered Edition, for 99 cents on one of the sales that they had. I think it was the Halloween sale.
Darksider. Isn't that how Amber got the dinosaur stuck in her? Oh, sorry. All right, never mind. Yes, Darksiders.
Nice callback, Todd. Uh, so it plays a lot like earlier Zelda games. If you're an older Nintendo fan,
I love Zelda.
especially like Ocarina of Time, that kind of thing, it's very much a riff off of Ocarina in Time, except that it's played out at the end of the world, and you play as War, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Ah,
So,
not the horseman I would go with. Behold, I saw a pale horse, and him who sat upon him was named Death. That's the one I'd go with.
well, thankfully, they came out with Darksiders 2, uh, and Death is who you get to play in
Yes!
Darksiders 2. So, yeah, so the studio that make that made the Darksider games, unfortunately, after the second game, went under, and we were afraid that we were never going to see any of the other Darksider games again. But they were within the last couple of years, the rights were bought up to the games. They've recently re-released these remastered versions of the games, and they're working right now to uh, develop and work on the rest of the Darksiders series.
Holy crap! How
So
can that dude even pick that sword up? The sword's bigger than he is.
have you ever seen Final Fantasy?
Uh, Good point. I guess technically you could pick up a sword that was bigger than you.
So I've been playing the crap out of that. I I haven't been streaming any of it this last week or two. I put together a couple of videos, just some tips and
Oh,
tricks,
hey,
that kind of thing.
plug your other endeavor, your video streaming.
Oh right, so I've got my own YouTube channel that I am uh, not using as much as I should, where I put up either videos that I've been making locally, uh, Ronin Dragon. I'll put that in the show notes on the video, and then I also stream on Twitch under the name Ronin Dragon 76.
I have videos on YouTube of me singing with a band, but I'm not going to tell you the name of the band, and you'll never find it.
I may also put those in the show notes.
What? All right. I will give Darksiders a try if it's still for sale. Well, no, you said it's on Steam. I'm pretty much console these days, but I will try the
So
next game you mentioned on console if I can.
yeah, so the next one that we talked about is Last of Us Part Two. So they just recently announced a Part Two. I loved the Part One. You can get the remastered edition for PS4 now, and it's been out long enough that you should be able to pick it up for $20 or less on PS4. If you haven't played through it yet, it's definitely a good play. Also good, same studio, Naughty Dog. The Uncharted series, if you haven't played those on PS4, they've got remastered versions there. Pick those up; they're great games. A lot of fun. It's more like a modern day Indiana Jones type thing for. But Last of Us is post apocalyptic. There's a zombie fungus spore type thing that's taken over much of the world and the rest of humanity. The Last of Us are just trying to survive.
Aren't we all? But no, the trailer that I watched for that, the graphics look amazing. So it definitely looks like something I'd be into. I will give it a try.
So yeah,
All
not a
right.
whole lot there to say on that. Can't wait to see that. I love the first game so much. And then
Making
last thing we had under games was Mechwarrior, something I was a huge fan of back in the late '80s, early '90s. Mechwarrior, when I built my first PC that I owned, that my PC, it was the game that convinced me that I needed to go out and get a flight stick to play video games for. I Before that it was just PC, keyboard and mouse, or worst case one of those old crappy Logitech USB controllers that you plug in. But yeah, Mechwarrior driving these mechs, moving the body left and right with that top hat controller on there. I loved these games, and they looked like crap, but I was so pleased to play them back then. And it was just a. Go ahead.
I mistakenly earlier said, "Oh, so it's like Titanfall," and I drew your ire where you pointed out, without Mechwarrior, there'd be no Titanfall.
Yeah, so this is a venerable series. This started out as tabletop gaming
Would you
back in
say
the
it's?
80s.
Would you say it's a grizzled series?
I there's a little bit of gray in the beard of this series. That's all I'm saying. Maybe at the temples, might have it grown out a little bit. You might even call it grizzled. But yeah, tabletop gaming. Way back in the early to mid '90s, when I was still going to game parlors to do D&D before I joined the military. We used to go to play D&D at this shop. That the front of the shop was it was called like the toolbox or something like that. They sold hardware, like mechanical tools, and you would go behind the counter and open the door to go to the back, and behind the front that door was a gaming shop.
That's awesome.
They had tables in there, they had racks with books, and this guy would sell stuff, and people would just go there. You knew that you go to this tool store and knock and say, "Hey, I'm here to play D&D," or whatever, and they would have multiple tables set up, and they would have 3D terrain, and they would have minis, and they were doing Mechwarrior battles, and it was BattleTech back then. On these tables, and this just amazing displays and all that kind of stuff. So whenever that stuff finally came out on PC, I just ate it up. But a lot of huge great memories way back in the day for me for this.
Those were good times back then, going to gaming parlors. There was a place I used to go called Hole in the Wall Books in Falls Church, and down in the basement they had a gaming area. And my mother was really anti Dungeons and Dragons. She's a very Christian woman, and thought that people were doing really horrible things. And we would go down into the basement and we would conjure up Satan and sacrifice virgins, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't in a bad way. It was, Wait.
What?
It was a different world back then. Yeah. So.
I mean, you're talking to a guy whose mother found his D&D books, and then I came home one day and she was out in the driveway with my books, ripping them in half and putting them a pile in the driveway with lighter fluid next to her, and she burned them in front of me. She burned my books in front of me.
That is horrible.
To save my soul.
It didn't work.
Now listen. Yeah, listen, I am not anti-religious or anything like that. It just, that was just ignorance.
You could take anything too far.
Yeah, it was just ignorance that led to that kind of behavior. The only way I saved half of those books was I was like, actually, you can't burn that one. That's my friend's. I have to give it back to him.
Smart thinking.
Yeah, so I saved maybe a half to a third of my books by taking them back to my friend's house.
I used to use that excuse. Hey, man, that's not mine. That's my friend's. I was just holding for him.
I don't even know how you use that.
That's partially. I'm just kidding.
I thought this was a cooking class.
All right. So at last, as Etta James would say, at last we get to spoilers, season finale of
All right, so
Westworld.
So spoilers right here. If you don't want to hear any spoilers about the season finale for Westworld, the last 2 episodes, we do this every episode or whatever we're watching. Turn back now. So
they all die. They all die.
Whatever I do next, just don't hate me.
All right, so that's the last warning that we're gonna say. Yes.
So the first thing I want to say is, God
they all
damn it,
they all do die.
God damn it, Gump, you're a genius. You were 100% right about William.
I told you. I told you. I told you. I told you.
How could I
And
not see that coming?
they've been throwing down hints the entire season.
All right.
The first couple of episodes, Man in Black comes back to visit Dolores for old time's sake.
Every time she, in her memory, thinks back to him, though, he's old Man in Black. And it made it look like he'd been going and torturing her for years and years and years. That's what threw me off. It was always young William or old William. They never showed any in-between William, because yes, it would have been a dead giveaway, but that's how I think it was a little unfair what they did, because they showed him in her past coming back and raping her and attacking her and doing all these things, but it was always the old William Man in Black.
So you want to know the one thing that shook my belief that he was William? When William and Dolores made it to the starting town. What's the
Sweetwater?
name of the town?
Sweetwater.
I think it's Sweetwater.
It is.
When they made it back to Sweetwater, and it was completely buried under the sand. At that point, I was like, maybe the Man in Black was from the time in the past, and he somehow broke her, and then William has come in. The whole fact that Sweetwater was uncovered, and then it was buried, and then it was uncovered again, kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah, that was a little dastardly and tricky.
But
and
you
also
got
a
to
little
see
illogical.
what Ford was unburying in the desert. Not only was he rebuilding the town, but he was building an ocean, apparently.
Yeah, that was we talked a little bit before about it. I'd been wondering the whole time throughout the show if this was a park set out in the old west in New Mexico or someplace out there where they just happened to build this park and they owned a bunch of land and it was there, or whether it was like the Truman Show where the entire thing is all made up. And we find out in the end it's the Truman Show, that it's not a real place.
I don't even think it's on planet Earth, personally.
Yeah, we talked about the Dark World tie-in that, maybe at the very end of the show, as the camera pans out, you find out they're on a big spaceship. That would be like mind blown.
On a big spaceship, on another planet, this could be, Mars as a recreation planet. It's kind of like the planet Risa, it's the pleasure planet. You go down to the planet or whatever. Some Star Trek name drops there for you Trek nerds out there. But yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I liked the I didn't see that coming when they froze the scene with Teddy and Dolores, and then everybody sitting there watching it. I was like, "Whoa, didn't see that coming." And I was prepared to start fast forwarding at that point. I was like, "I really don't need to see Teddy and Dolores. Oh, I love you. I don't want to die. Oh, we're gonna, And my finger was on the button, and I'm like, "Why are we watching this?" And then boom, pay dirt. I'm like, genius. Okay, all right. I'm just an impatient bastard.
Yeah, when they pan out, that was a little bit of a surprise for me. I was kind of in it, following what's going on, and I was like, well, whatever. It's just gonna re-loop at this point. But then freeze frame, kind of, and the audience claps with lighting on them, and yeah. Then Ford gives his speech about his new story. I thought that was brilliant. Now, that brings us up to another topic, Ford himself.
Yes.
So, I'm kind of wondering, and maybe this is tinfoil hat again, and if so, whatever. But I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put it out there now before season 2, that maybe Ford isn't dead.
I'm a believer. You've won me over. I'm on board with this theory completely.
So it could be a couple of ways. So, Todd, you originally mentioned a number of times that Ford was making somebody in that lab where Dolores and Arnold talked together in the room where the director of QA gets killed. During that scene, there's a machine printing out a body. and we don't ever see who it is. We don't see the gender. We don't see any identifying characteristics of the body, but he's printing out somebody. And you had mentioned, well, at the time, we both thought that it might have been the director of QA and that he was going to replace her and just sort of run her as a plant so he can continue to do what he wants to do. And it turns out that they didn't play it that way. And so that leaves the question of who is this woman? Or not woman, who is this person? And you brought up the fact that you think it's Ford.
I do. And I think the reason I thought, because they flipped something in this last episode. Up until this episode, I thought that the relationship that Ford had with Arnold was an antagonistic one. But in the last episode, you reveal it wasn't antagonistic at all. They were truly friends, and he made Bernard really as a tribute to his friend because he missed his friend and his partner. And so the idea that he would then make an android of himself to maybe be, well, at this point, I think he probably doesn't know that Bernard is not dead. That, you know, the ransacking androids on the loose have brought Bernard back and fixed him. But you know, I thought it was kind of a parallel that, you know, he's kind of admitting, you know, maybe Arnold was right, and I'm going to join him by creating an android of myself. And so I assumed that the way it would go would be he is, you know, giving the park over to the androids. He lets Dolores kill him, but he's transferred his body or made some semblance of his memories or whatever into this android that he was creating in his lab. But then you said, what if it wasn't really him that got shot, but instead the android, to convince all the other people there that he was dead?
Yeah, so that's a little bit tinfoil hat. I'll admit it, but I love the idea that Ford just wants to be left alone. Uh-oh, Todd's going somewhere. There you go.
There we go.
Ford just wants to be left alone.
Yes, I do. I just want to be left alone.
And he wants it so much that he's willing to fake his death in front of the board of directors. He's willing to drive them out of the park, thinking that the robots have taken over and they're too dangerous to come back in, that it's not worth it to go in, especially if they get what, you know, they think is his ultimate tech out of the park in the Abernathy shell that they put together in earlier episodes. Maybe it's no longer worth it to even bother with the park. They just let it run down on its own or fall into chaos or whatever. And that could be especially true if it's on another planet or if it's on a spaceship, you know, whatever. They just let that thing go.
And I think they're going to find that what they've smuggled out is not the tech that they think it is. I think they're going to get, and they're going to plug it in. They're going to find it's a Grizzled Geek podcast, the whole collection. And they're going to be happy. They'll be like, oh, this is better.
There's over 10 episodes here.
That's right.
Value add.
Sorry. Geritol. No. All right. So, yes, I agree with that theory. I think that makes a lot of sense. The other spoiler bit teaser for next season, maybe, perhaps, is the Japan world and the SW that some people on the internet think is Sino world or Sino world, or whatever the phrase is, or the term, or Shogun world, and which probably makes a little more sense. So we had talked about on one of our walks whether we thought there were other worlds like they did in the original movie where they had medieval world and ancient Rome world. And then when they look down at one point inside the facility and you see all of those levels in there.
There were a ton of levels.
It's possible that there's just no end to how many worlds there are if you keep going down those levels. They could have any number of things.
Yeah, I mean, and if it is a little bubble world, you know, its own little biodome, it doesn't have to be worlds, you know, spread out next to each other. They could be worlds on top of worlds on top of worlds. As well. So
you look at some of the characters that Ford brought in at the end, and didn't they show some of the Shoguns in there?
So they showed in that last episode where Maeve is breaking out of the facility and she's heading towards the train. She's getting the hell out of there. She's going to finally escape. They travel through the room where they're training the Japanese samurai.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely Japanese armor, Japanese swords that they're all wearing. And so they have kind of a last stand with the bandits from Westworld who are accompanying Maeve, and Maeve and the tech who is helping her get out. So I just want to sidetrack just for a second. I don't understand his motivations whatsoever. And I thought he was going to be dead.
Yeah.
When she said, you're not bad for a human, I thought for sure that she was going to take that gun and put it into his mouth and then just splatter his brains all over the elevator.
The only thing I can figure is that Ford went to him ahead of time and said, because he program, somebody programmed, I thought they said they hinted that Ford programmed Maeve to go on this bender, because at one point when Bernard is saying this whole thing is programmed into you, that you're going to go and you're going to recruit people and you're going to do this, the whole thing's in there. Somebody had to do that. So in order to make all this happen, somebody had to go to one of the technicians and say, look here, pal, this is what you're going to do.
Well, so I'm not sure that he knew about it and that he had knowledge ahead of time about it. I think initially it started out with him being ambitious and wanting to be a coder, and then just maybe making a emotional connection with Maeve, with her plight, and then wanting to do the right thing with her, which is kind of an interesting thing in itself, right? So many people go into Westworld and they treat the hosts there as objects. They're sex objects, or they're objects to shoot down in the in the street. You see, some not badass white guy, in Western outfit, shoot down the sheriff in the middle of the road, and he's like, haha, I just shot the sheriff. Woo!
Yeah. These violent delights have violent ends.
Exactly. You see all these things, playing out there, and then this tech, even the other tech, that, oh my god, so creepy scene there in the last bit. They were drawing that out so long. All right, I'm just going to say it. There was a scene where this tech was rubbing lubricant onto his hands, and there was another host that was about to receive certain attentions, let's say, from this tech, that was just creeping me the hell out.
It was, and they went too far. I think he was in the middle of receiving his attentions when the chick breaks through the glass.
Well, so I don't think they went too far. I think it was brilliant in their choice of doing that, because at that point in time, you really felt for this android, for this piece of machinery and code, you felt like he was going to be violated.
I think I would have felt worse for him if I hadn't known what was coming. I knew that this wasn't going to get far before that guy was going to turn the tables, and it was going to end very badly for Mr. Android Rapist.
Well, let's just say that that wasn't his first day at the rodeo.
Well, that's true. Apparently, he made it sound like this had been going on for some time. So, yeah, there's a little
that particular android was a favorite of his. And he was about to receive his comeuppance. Yes. So it helps to establish a rapport with the audience to these hosts, to their situation, to their plight, to how badly they're being used, to highlight that and make you feel some kind of connection to them, and make you feel almost less of a connection to those bastards who've been doing it to them. And you don't really feel that bad. I was kind of cheering for Maeve and her squad of misfit toys there at the end to get out of there. And I was also kind of cheering when she gets onto the train at the very end, and she sees that little girl, and despite the fact that she's made it all the way out, she's done it, finally, she gets off that train because that's the core of her identity.
Yeah, I had mixed feelings about that. I was like, she didn't make it out. She's never going to make it out now. But we need her to not make it out, or she wouldn't be on the show next season.
Right.
She would have
Well,
been on the train when it took off from the ship and went out through space into the next space station.
that's what I was about to say. She couldn't get on the train because if they showed her on the train that goes to the docking station to the shuttle, and the shuttle taking off from the planet or the spaceship, we would have known that it was out in space or
That's right.
somewhere else off world. And we can't have that. We need to have some mysteries so I can continue to craft my beautiful tinfoil hats.
Tear it all down. My Dark World reference to another old movie where you find out at the very end this whole weird world is on a spaceship. I We talked about that on the walk, but that's the concept there. That would be kind of interesting if they did that. I don't know if they're going to do it. They could be on Earth. It could be, who knows.
I just don't think they're on Earth. Real estate at some point in time, doing something like that on Earth, is going to be, something in the future that's going to be very, very valuable. For just people living.
I think that they could be in a really huge building in the middle of LA or something. I mean, there's no telling where this building is. Although that doesn't make any sense because you would need to take a freaking train to get there. So it must be at a remote location somewhere if you have to get on a super fast train to get there.
So I don't think the train is how you get to Westworld. I think the train is how you get into the park from the central station. I think that if you were going to go to, say, Shogun World, that you wouldn't arrive on a train. You would take a ship and you would land in the harbor, or you would step through a door and you were in, the palace chambers in whatever
Right.
Japanese castle that you were going to be in or whatever. I think that the train was
Wait.
an
Which train?
anachronism.
Which train are we talking about here? Are we talking
The
about Old
train,
West train or the super fast?
Old West train.
Oh, I'm talking about the monorail. The
Yes, so monorail is just to get them to a central station. It wasn't necessarily like a bullet train. It was just a small short commute, in my opinion.
So you think it could still be in a city or someplace that they're taking this train in? That much like if you go to Orlando and you go from the parking lot into the park, you get on a little monorail thing and you ride it in and
Exactly right.
okay, I can
And
dig it.
inside of Disney World, they have another train that allows you to go into the different parts of the park.
Yeah, like you could go to Epcot Center or you could go to what else is there? There's the Magic Kingdom and Epcot Center. Is there something else there? Is there a water
Oh,
park
I
maybe?
was talking about inside of Magic Kingdom itself. They've got a little
Oh,
train that goes around there.
I haven't been in years, so I can't remember a lot about it.
Yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of going as a child, but the last time we went, not so much.
Much like Tahiti, it's a magical place. So, have we wrapped up Westworld? Is there anything we've left out? Oh, I did look up Sino World. Sino is Chinese, so it's got to be Shogun World. So
Yeah,
that was the one thing that I did look up. So the S must stand for Shogun. Um, I can't think of anything else that happened on the show significant to talk about.
no,
So,
I think that's really the big pieces. Oh,
oh,
well,
oh,
one
there.
last thing. Um, so the one thing that William slash Man in Black uh, was sad about, and one thing that I harped on earlier in the season was the fact that God mode was in effect.
Yeah,
Uh, and so in the very end, Wyatt's men, Wyatt, spoilers, is Dolores, the Wyatt protocol Wyatt's men come out of the tree line, and they're shooting in as Dolores is shooting the shareholders there in town, and he gets shot in the arm, and the look on his face, he
Pure
is so
delight.
damn happy
He
that
is.
finally a challenge.
Finally,
Yeah, he gets to pit himself against something real. He is in mortal danger, and he loves it.
yes. I thought that was great. And it was very well played, and it was a perfect ending to the show because it sets you up for, wow, next year we could be in for a wild ride. But I don't see how they can turn this in any more than 2 seasons, but we'll see. You know, they've got good writers at HBO, so who knows what they'll like. Um, we talked earlier about the thing we thought was obvious, and they didn't go in the obvious direction. They chose a different direction. The obvious direction would have been that person, the android being made in Ford's lab, being the director, and they were replacing her, you know, but no, they didn't do that. They did something else, and we don't even know what that is yet. It could be Ford. It could be something entirely different. So, looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, yeah. It could have been her. It could have been that they were printing Wyatt again. It could have been any number of things. But yeah, a lot of questions. Can't wait to see it next year. So I'm happy. I'm pleased with the way things wrapped up. Could have been a few episodes shorter, in my opinion, and
Yeah,
pick up the pace a little bit.
pick up the
But
pace some.
but maybe the desire to see something, drawing it out, the anticipation, uh, allowed me to enjoy these last couple of episodes all that much more. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there were important things that they put in there to set things up, and it was carefully crafted. I'm I'm looking forward to season 2. We'll see. Maybe, hopefully, it'll have a little more action now that things seem to be really taking off now. Next week, um, one idea I have, maybe we could preview some of the shows returning the second half of the season, since a lot of the shows that we watch are doing their mid-season finales. Talk about some of the shows we're looking forward to that are second half of the year shows, like The Expanse, or
Ooh, The Expanse.
Humans is another show that I really liked. On maybe it was on AMC. It was the second half of the season show. So second half of the season has some shows coming back. Magicians, I think, is another one that's the second half of the season show.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. Although that one went weird towards the end.
It did go a little weird, but maybe we can preview those next week, see what we can find out about them, and talk about some of those.
Sounds like a plan. All right, so I'm Mitch,
Music to my ears. I'm Todd.
and we are the Grizzled Geeks.
Ever so
Thank
grizzled.
you, and good night.